Hey everybody, it's Doom here from Dungeons and Doom Biscuit. Why don't you grab a size large-ish base and some kind of plastic skeletal hand. Use barbecue skewers if you have to, whatever. And join me on a journey to tell another story. In 1870, it was a time of hardship in the United States. And a gentleman named Jacob Lentz had kind of fallen on hard times. Conflicts, economic strife made it a time of opportunity and scarcity at the same moment. It was a scary time. People who had been endeavored to own slaves and stuff, the world was changing. So a man in the North who had always been into making textiles, which he sourced from the South, found himself in a position where he couldn't be doing that. Well, that created a lot of trouble. He had a beautiful young wife and a bunch of other stuff, so he took his business, sold it, and opted to try something else. He bought rights to land that the person who sold it to him didn't have. The land had belonged to indigenous Native American people, but he didn't know that, and he purchased it anyways. And he was going to go mine for nickel and copper, because he was told that with them minting coins and doing all this other stuff and all these changes that were coming to the economy, that the future was going to come in the form of being able to sell the government money, metal for money contracts, or to make money, I'm sorry. So he sold his business knowing that it was the end of its time. And my glue gun's off, unfortunately. I have to wait for that to catch up. Let me get a base to work on, too. So Jacob Lentz, let me check the name to make sure that's right. I have a note here. Yeah, Jacob Lentz, the entrepreneur, sells his business and his life changes. He needs strong men to do the labor, and he can't afford a bunch of people. So he goes to the Great North and literally hires the strongest people he can think of, lumberjacks. Now, we want this part to show on the outside because it's got more texture and it's more interesting, even though that would be the outside of the hand normally. We're going to put that on the inside. So Jacob Lentz takes the money, invests it in buying this land contract to own the land. And then he goes to the Great North and he looks for lumberjacks to help him facilitate his work. And he hires 15 strong, capable men straight out of a lumber camp, creating an enormous fight, pissing people off. And he endeavors to travel to this land he purchased. And in 1871, he makes it to the land that he purchased. So that's going to be the thumb. We're going to get a little bit there. He makes it to the land he purchased with these guys. And everything's great. They can't find the mine entrance. And they say that's okay. He's got a bunch of equipment, and he's got dogs and tents and everything you need. And they start to dig, and they do find, after some work, the treasure. And they start mining it and packing it up. That's the last contact anybody had with them, was a letter he sent to his beautiful young wife saying that we found it, we found it, we found it. Now, they were in Colorado, and then no one heard from them after that for quite some time. They had a guide, an Iroquois guide, as part of their group. And when he was offered so much money to help them, his elders were like, hey, don't help that guy. Don't do that. Don't go there. That place is bad. The place is sacred. You're gonna get screwed up. But the guide think his name is Sargon, if I'm not mistaken, ignores his elder and goes anyways because the money is so big it's going to change everything he knows about the world. So Sargon says, I'm going. And he goes with them. He's missing too. So they send some people out, and they don't know exactly where this land claim is, so they send some people to Colorado to find him. And they find no trace of anybody. Nothing. It's considered a total wash. They're gone. No one can find them. They give up looking for him. Well, 3 months later, in Clear Springs, Nevada, coming out of the desert is a group of men riding horses as fast as a horse could be ridden. The horses were undernourished, and some of their hearts were exploding on the final stretches they were running up. The sheriff sent a detachment out thinking they were raiders or something at first. Oops, wrong piece. But it turns out they were not raiders. They were lumberjacks, led by a man of native origin in a death sprint running from something. Apparently, as they were loading up the first haul and planning to figure out how to handle it, whether they should all go home or some should stay there or what they were going to do, they thought they had made so much money that he could get a bigger crew and more people. All that was sounding great. Well, it didn't work that way. He was killed instantly as a larger-than-a-man skeletal hand swam like a fish through the hard-pan desert floor of southern Colorado, grabbed him, and pulled him underground. In horror, they all watched. They drew whatever weapons they had, and then moments later it resurfaced and started pulling people underground one by one. The Native American guide and 6 of the lumberjacks got on the horses and started sprinting for their dear lives. And they ran from southern Colorado to Nevada, almost dying of dehydration, and their horses ultimately mostly dying from overexertion because the horses were terrified as well, and the men were essentially just holding on for dear life. The guide told the people, the sheriff and the mayor and everybody in Nevada, that something called the Undoki had claimed them for going on sacred ground. When he was questioned about the Undoki, he couldn't tell them much about it. He couldn't tell them where it had come from or how they could encounter it or how they could deal with it. All he said was that nothing hurts it and you can't hide from it. Well, apparently that wasn't 100% true, because as they found themselves in in Nevada, apparently at some point it had stopped chasing them. They could not say when, they did not know what the deal was, but it had stopped. It had given up and it was gone. All men involved were terrified, and ultimately many of them died anyways from other ailments within the year. Jacob Lynch's wife never found out what happened to her husband, and all their money that was tied up in it was gone. She eventually remarried to another man named Douglas Ford, and Douglas Ford found proof that he owned such land. And what did Douglas Ford do? Well, I'm not going to tell you what Douglas Ford did until we paint this thing up. I'm joking. Douglas Ford married the young, beautiful widow Lynch, and then promptly, after finding out that he now owned this land claim, took men out in search of it. They did not find any mine. They did not find anything. The men he took out there and the guide that he took with him had no interest in pursuing it or trying to sort out the mystery of what happened. There was an uneasy feeling among the people, and they decided to just kind of let it go. But the Fords did keep that land and eventually sold it and bought other land, and they did put a ranch out there. And the ranch never did well, as if it was cursed. Since this is swimming through the earth like a shark or a fish, I'm going to assume that there could be some rubble and stone around it, but probably not an enormous amount. So I'm going to get a couple small rocks and a large rock to add a couple large rocks too, actually, to add weight to the base and kind of fill this up some. So for a couple large rocks here, I'll get them on the base, get them started. I'll put 2, I think, would probably be adequate there. Get the kind of flatter side down so they have more surface area connected. Push them up as close as I can into that base. And that's going to add some substantial weight. And then with these smaller rocks, we will just make the terrain look a little more exciting. I'm going to assume that as it swims, it knocks up some rubble and stuff, and that when it bursts out, even more significantly so. I've never seen the Undoki personally, though after that event, there were other sightings of the Undoki, and I did find other stories about similar things. I never found any other stories about the actual Undoki, but I found a story about something called the Reclaimer, that when people have done injustices to Earth, the Reclaimer will come and take them back and make them part of the cycle that replenishes the land. And it was just one small story, and I think it was a Hopi story. You have to understand, Native American lore is so big because, like, the more I dig into it, the more I find out that every tribe and every nation, like, so they're like different areas, and those are kind of like divided up into nations, and then those are divided up into tribes. Like the Cherokee was actually a ton of different tribes. The Iroquois was a ton of different tribes. So trying to get in here and learn anything about one specifically, the lore is very convoluted. So unless you talk to somebody who is actually a historian of that particular group, I doubt you would be able to get like super good, accurate stories that track. Because everything I'm finding is like showing me that a lot of the lore is misconstrued and changed and has Christian undertones mixed into it, or any of the, not always Christian, but any of the settler type storylines get mixed in, you know. So there's like spirit legends that are like, sound like they could also be Christian stories. And like the great creator concept, it went from several spirits, and great spirits is like their gods, that some did and did not worship, or just acknowledged that they existed, but didn't have like an actual system of faith to acknowledge their power or their dominion. Well, it was just very awkward. They're all different. And everything's, you know, like the Comanche, the Mohawks, like all these people had different ways they celebrated religion, and they didn't really coincide with each other super well. So to be a historian of that would take an enormous amount of time and research. So I think that finding individuals who know specific tribal lore would be an easier approach. But again, I'm not even sure how you'd find those people. I don't have the money to go looking. That's for damn sure. But I am interested. Having a good working knowledge of the topics you deal with in D&D is helpful. When you're using a complete fantasy world and you're just going and looking at history of real world stuff to get your answers, that's one thing. But when you're trying to use a real world as the basis for your world, or the basis of your story, and the dangers in that story, it creates a different dynamic. And that's where I'm at now, is in this different dynamic where I'm trying to figure out what's what. And we're just going to sprinkle some up here. One, to kind of dry up glue, and two, to kind of create some interesting texture for the paint job. All right. I think we can do this in one video if you're patient enough to let me spray it real quick. This does not have to be a two-part suffering for any of us. I'm priming it with this flat red primer from Rust-Oleum. Where's my sleeve? There's my sleeve. I'm going to take it off camera for a second. We're going to hit it with hot air. I'll take a sip of my beverage. Now let's get some paint and a larger kind of brush. Lighten this up and then start on our real paint job. I couldn't figure out, since I couldn't find a lot of lore about the Undoki, that one story was, I was able to find a couple different versions of that same story, and some of the stories didn't even mention, like, the dude's name, the Jacob Lintz, and the Ford, the dude who married his widow. I couldn't find a whole lot on it. I heard the story years ago from a guy I served with who told me a bunch of, he called them res stories, because he grew up part of his life on the reservation with his either mother or father, and then part of his life in Wyoming with his other parents. His parents were separated. So he had a lot of stories that he had been told, and he didn't have a lot of details to go with those stories, unfortunately. But I remember that story, and I didn't remember what it was called. I just remember it was a giant hand that came out of the desert, and that it was in kind of modern era. 1870 was... I don't think he told me it was 1870. I think I read that somewhere else, but it was just interesting to me. So I did some research on it as I've been going through my sick week here, recovery. I've had a lot more time to do sitting around stuff since I'm not working. All right. I do like that. I think that's going to look like something terrifying. Now I'm going to get some khaki. And that's a little thicker than I want. I'm going to get a soft brush. It's going to give me some decent coverage. I'm going to dip that in a little bit of water. I'm going to thin this up a little bit. And then we're going to focus just on the hand part. Not getting it on the train if we can help it. And I don't care if this is perfect, as usual. Perfection is not a prerequisite of a good craft. I've said it before, and I'll say it again and again. I'd like to tell you I coined that phrase, but I don't know if I did. Could have heard it somewhere else. Though, I don't know a lot of people who use the word prerequisite in their regular speech, so it very well could have been me. Oh, man. Should have took a little bit more of a break before I started this video. I am hurting my dudes, and I'm trying not to take pills because they just make me sleep. And sleep and sleep and sleep. And they make me silly, and they make me kind of have some like perception problems as well, which is awkward for me. Like, I like the world to look normal and the same all the time. I don't want anything to look or feel or sound different. I don't want to feel like I have extra perceptionary issues. I don't want to hear things that I shouldn't be able to hear, like the sound of water running in the other room or my heart beating or blood pumping through my veins. I had some weird shit during this period that I did not like. We'll start to dry that paint with a hot air gun, and I'll have a drink of my beverage. Now, you could probably use the base right there and stop, and it would be okay. It wouldn't be a bad mini. It would be all right, and people would know what it was on the tabletop. We're going to go a little bit more with it, though, just because. So I'm getting a color called Ivory, and I'm going to get a dry brush. This is a cheap makeup brush from the Dollar Tree. For those of you that have been following along, I use a lot of cheap makeup brushes for the Dollar Tree in my crafts. This is going to create some interesting variation in undertones for the lightest dry brush at the end. It'll make it just look that much cooler, and we're just going to accept that as a victory. I should have held a mini up because it said it was, yeah, it's bigger than a mini. You could grab a dude and pull him underground, or a chick or a horse. I'm going to get one more off-white color. This is called Antique Parchment. And this is probably not necessary, but I'm going to do it anyways. And this is like a warm tone off-white. We're going to lighten it up a little bit more. Then I think the answer would be to come back with a wash, but I haven't decided if that's what we're going to do or not. I think a wash might be a good thing, though. Might be. All right. So for our wash, I'm going to use a color called Chestnut. I'm going to get a little bit of my wash water. So let me get the brushes out of that. And my wash water is mostly whitish, so this won't hurt me too much, I don't think. I'm going to get a little bit of my wash water. DI water would be better. But I don't feel like, let me get a little DI water, actually. This is not DI. This is distilled water. Sorry. I don't have any DI. I'm going to get a little bit of distilled water. Just enough to almost fill the bottom of that cup. I'm going to get a little bit of rubbing alcohol. And fill up the rest of the bottom of that cup. I'm going to get a tiny drop of soap. That was more soap than I wanted, for damn sure. And I'm going to get this chestnut. I'm going to squirt a little bit in there. Now, I'm not sure if that's the exact color I want, but we'll see in a minute. I'm going to mix it up with this small brush. And I'm not quite happy with it. It's a little too orangish brown for what I wanted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit of pavement in with it, just a tiny bit of pavement to muddy it up and give it a dirtier look. So just a tiny squirt of pavement like that, and then let's mix it up again and see what we get. That will do, pig. Now don't forget, I put way too much soap in here. This actually might be a terrible wash. So we don't want it to separate. It will separate because of that rubbing alcohol. So you want to make sure it's mixed up good. Hit your piece. Get it in all the cracks, crevices, and stuff as fast as you can. Okay. Just like that. And you want to dab with a rag. Surface spots the best you can. Clean that up some. Okay. Like that. And you want to hit it with the air gun on high. And while that's drying, let's start on the base. I'm going to get kind of a bigger brush. I'm going to get my Dollar Tree paint, deep brown. And I'm going to start hitting that area around it with a pretty even coat. Doesn't have to be perfect. Of this deep brown. Rinsing that brush out. And I'm going to get khaki. Come back in and start doing that painted desert kind of look. Now I'm going to get that cardboard back out, and I'm going to grab another Dollar Tree brush real quick. I'm looking for one that's dry. All mine are wet. There we go. And I'm going to get that antique parchment, that off-white. And I'm going to come back one time real quick. I'm just going to hit some of this upper area. Lighten that back up a tiny bit, but I don't want to go overboard. I don't want it to be super aggressive. I just want to kind of give it a little bit more lightening up. All right, there it is. That's the, I think, Undoki. I'll have to check my note card. Yeah, Undoki. The mysterious, larger than man-sized hand that swims through hard pan desert and ruins your life. Anyways, if you like what we're doing here on the channel, Please like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell icon, leave a comment, and all the happy crappy that pleases the great spirits of the algorithm. Check out the Discord and the website. Those are linked in the description. And also in the description, you'll find a discount code to get 25% off your first month of Dungeon Swag Minis. There's a free mini offer out there. Go on the website, click on the link that says free, or click on the store, click free mini, come to the Discord and get your discount code, and we will send you a mini with no expense to you, no shipping, no charge, nothing. We're just going to send it to you because we know our minis are good, and we know that once you get one, you're going to be like, damn, I want more. We started this business specifically because we wanted minis, so if you think that we're not still doing it because we like minis, you're crazy. I might make minis all week long, and I still don't ever feel like I have enough. Besides, I'm competing with Sweeney Todd to have the most minis in the world. I don't know who holds the record, but before I die, it's going to be me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.